All right, so let's look at the last part of this chapter, and that's looking at blood groups. So blood groups is all based upon agglutination, and this is a clumping of red blood cells following a transfusion reaction. This is looking at normal blood on a slide. This is agglutination, this clumping that occurs. And this clumping occurs because antibodies are going to attach to antigens, which are on the cell surfaces of cells, and it's going to cause this clumping. So an antigen is a chemical substance that stimulates B cells to produce antibodies. Another way to think about it, it's just a foreign substance, a foreign protein in most cases. And what's going to happen here is an antibody is going to grab onto an antigen. And antigens typically stick off of the cell surface. All right, so this is showing antigens here. This is an anti-A antibody, and it's going to grab onto that antigen. And as you can see, these antibodies are grabbing onto antigens on different cells, and that causes that clumping to occur. All right, so let's first look at the ABO blood group. So the ABO blood group, all right, so if you have A blood, so this is a person with A blood right here, all right, so your genetics to have A blood, all right, so let's take a step back, all right, we have 46 chromosomes. 23 of those we get from our mom, 23 we get from our dad. The chromosomes carry the genes, all right? So what that means is that every gene we get from our, every gene that we get from our mom, we're going to get a corresponding gene for that trait from our dad, okay? And it's how those genes interact which determine what our traits are, all right? So for your genetics to have A blood, you could have 2 genes for A, one from mom, one from dad, or you could have 1 gene for A and 1 gene for O. So meaning you get a gene, let's say you got the A gene from your mom, you got the O gene from your dad, okay? You will exhibit A blood, okay? So this is a case of what we call simple dominance. The A gene is dominant to the O gene, all right? So here, your red blood cells have antigen A, all right? But you produce the anti-B antibody, meaning if somebody gave you B blood, that blood would clump in you, all right? So somebody with A blood, we'll talk about what they accept and donate here after we go through everything. If you have B blood, only about 9% of the population has B blood. Oh, I forgot to say 21% of the population has A. Now these percentages differ from group to group and from country to country. So, that's what it is in the United States. All right? So if you have B blood, you can get this 2 ways. You can have 2 genes for B, or 1 gene for B and 1 gene for O. All right? Your red blood cells produce the A antigen, all right? And you produce the anti-A antibody, meaning it will clump A blood, okay? Next is AB blood. So down here is AB blood. AB blood, you have 1 gene for A and 1 gene for B, all right? And you exhibit both of those traits, right? So these are red blood cells that have both the A and B antigens on their cell surface, all right? But you don't produce an antibody. You don't see any antibody here, all right? Next is O blood. O blood, you have to have 2 recessive alleles, so both O alleles. Now, 47% of the population has O blood. Only 3% has AB blood. So this is the rarest blood type. All right? If you have O blood, you do not produce an antigen, but you produce both the anti-A and the anti-B antibodies. All right? So we look at who can it be donates to and who can accept. Well, let's do that now. So if we look at O blood, one of the things you probably already know about O blood is it's a universal donor. We can all accept O blood. And the reason that we can all accept O blood is because there are no antigens on it. All right, so there's no antigens. There's nothing for an antibody to grab onto. All right? So O blood can donate to everybody, but they can only accept O blood because they can't accept A blood because they produce the anti-A antibody. They can't accept B blood because they produce the anti-B antibody. Well, they can't accept the AB blood either because, they produce both the anti-A and anti-B antibodies. All right? If we look at AB blood can accept everybody's blood. It's a universal recipient. And that's because it doesn't produce an antibody. So there's no clumping. All right? It can only donate to, though, only AB, right? Can't donate to A because it has the B antigen, and it can't donate to B because it has the A antigen, all right? A blood can accept blood from A and O, and it can donate to AB. B blood can accept blood from B and O, and it can donate to B and AB. Now, let's look at another blood group, and another blood group is called the RH blood group. All right? So with RH blood group, this is the positive and negative blood group. So the genetics on this, about 85% of the population is positive. And to be positive, you can have 2 genes for positive, or 1 gene for positive and 1 gene for negative. All right? So once again, positive is dominant to negative. Your red blood cells produce a Rh antigen, also known as antigen D. Sometimes it's referred to as a positive antigen as well. You do not, however, produce an antibody. You can accept positive and also negative bloods, but you can only donate to positive. All right? With negative blood, about 15% of the population has that. In your genetics there, you have to have 2 negative genes. All right? So it's a recessive trait. Your red blood cells do not produce an antigen, just like O blood in that case, but you produce the anti-D or anti-RH or the anti-positive antigen, okay? Or antibody, sorry. Produce an anti-positive antibody. And so that's going to clump positive blood, all right? So you can't accept positive blood. You can only accept negative blood, but you can donate to positive or negative. Now, most of the time, this isn't an issue, right? If you have A blood, you go to the hospital, they give you A. If they don't have A, they give you O, and so on, all right? Same with positive and negative. But a complication can arise during a pregnancy, all right? So if the guy is negative and the lady is, if the guy is positive, the lady is negative, right? And the fetus there is also positive. This is where complications can arise. On her first pregnancy, that's where her first exposure to that positive antigen occurs, all right? Now, unlike the ABO blood group, if you're A, you're already producing the anti-B antibody. Here, in the RH blood group, you don't produce the, negative people don't produce the anti-positive antigen, or antibody, until after you get exposed to the positive antigen, all right? So what's going to happen here is she can have that pregnancy, but what's going to happen now is she produces that anti-positive antibody. And so what's going to happen here in her second pregnancy and on is that anti-positive antibody is going to kill that developing fetus. All right? So it crosses over the placenta and kills that developing fetus. Now, this doesn't mean that if the guy's positive and the girl's negative, that you can't have kids, because nowadays we give women a shot called RhoGAM, and that actually prevents the antibody from crossing over the placenta, and so that saves the pregnancy.